This is the portfolio of a WallStreetBets legend. He started with just $35,000, and in 21 months, he ended up with over $8 million. But this wasn't just a lucky YOLO, it's an entire story. Crypto debt, paper handing GME, losing $1 million in a single day, and building a cult-like following. Today, we're deconstructing the full saga of SirJackALot. Remember that this recap is not financial advice, but I wish you luck on your effort in replicating his success. The first post we'll dive into was SirJack's quote, Magnum Dong Opus Part 1, where he turns $35,000 into $1.75 million in his first year. That's over a 50x. SirJack claims that even to this day, looking back on this post gives him a giant grin and a rock-hard full mast. We start off with a screenshot that any trader would kill for in their portfolio, but it wasn't a full pretty picture from the start. Just a couple of short years earlier, Jack had some hardships and Wendy's dumpster moments of his own. These 7 chapters of the Magnum Dong Opus Part 1 were written around Christmas of 2020. Chapter 1 is SirJack's crypto arc in 2017 and 2018. He threw away every last dollar he had into Ethereum at $12, swing traded a ton of shitcoins and ICOs, an initial coin offering, and the crypto version of an IPO. It was all fun and games until the music stopped in early 2018 and crypto experienced a nasty crash. SirJack turned 8K into 300K, but after the crash was left with 30K. So why did he call this period very dark? Sure, he lost some profits, but he still had a 4 times gain. The problem was that SirJack's gains all happened in 2017 as crypto peaked roughly right at the turn of the year, and he owed the IRS $120,000 of those gains. For each subsequent year, you can only lock in $3,000 of your losses as a write-off, so even though SirJack lost a ton and only ended up netting $22,000, he owed the IRS $120,000. I'm not sure how he figured it out, but he says he ended up in debt to some very bad people and that it was, quote, a very dark time for him. We now move to Chapter 2 titled WallStreetBets Tuition, where SirJackALot meets WallStreetBets. It was the infamous Facebook puts play by Young Millionaire, where he turned 28K into 451K on Facebook puts in 2018 that had him hooked. Jack learned the degenerate essential starter pack, options, FDs, tendies, and memes, of course. In 2018, just like now, Commander Cheeto, aka President Trump, had quite the pull on the market even from just a simple tweet. SirJack says the first stock he ever bought on Robinhood was on August 7, 2018. Ticker HMNY, Helios and Matheson Analytics, the now defunct data analytics company, and also some other early on plays like AMC calls and Match Weekly puts. Despite mixed success, by late 2018, SirJack had ended up losing $30,000 on options and swore them off forever, until of course, a year and a half later in 2020, when he lost another $10,000 on options. I quote Jack here, "Fucking weeklies, man. They're like if cocaine and blackjack made a dopamine-infused baby." Despite these early failures, the persistence and determination of SirJackALot would finally pay off. Chapter 3 is aptly called The Road to 1 Million. SirJack displays a chart that shows month-by-month account balance, with the most impressive monthly gains being from February to June. You can ignore the 11K in January, as SirJack deposited more into his account and started with 35K in February, and that one withdrawal in June was to buy a Tesla. The rest of the balance changes were all from trading. So what were his trades that led to this massive run? SirJack says that the path from 35K to 850K between February and June of 2020 consisted of several plays that we're going to do a breakdown on right now. First, Jack bought APT, or Alpha Protech, and CODX, or Co-Diagnostics. SirJack says that by January and February of 2020, it was very obvious to him what was going on with the coronavirus. Instead of looking at the noise and panic of the masses, SirJack looked at the facts, ignoring media clickbait like the fake Screams video from Wuhan in exchange for real, tangible data, like the Chinese government building up a hospital in just 10 days to combat the virus. APT built masks, so Jack rode that up a ways in early 2020, and then he switched to CODX, who made tests for diseases, which also over doubled from $11 to $24. He luckily sold right before their botched earnings report, which had a lot of technical errors. From there, Jack saw a curious spike in volume for NCLH of Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings on May 14, 2020. He saw a strong support at $10 and therefore went all in at $10.57. Although Jack knew the coronavirus was here to stay for a while, the market mood was optimistic and people were hoping the pandemic would end. NCLH rode up on the hype, allowing Jack to sell just 3 weeks later on June 4th for $19.75, but he felt a bit of FOMO as the stock continued to ride up to $26 in just 2 days. Another play Jack went long on was Chewy. They make pet food and supplies. Jack got a dog, bought Chewy at $41, and then subsequently sold at $46 because it was moving kind of slowly. He felt a bit of FOMO from selling that as well. Chewy was sitting at $104 at the time of his post, but just as well that he sold because Chewy since then has dropped all the way down to $40 by the time I'm making this video in 2025, which is right around his entry point. After this fairly quick 4-month run-up profiting from masks, COVID tests, cruise lines, and pet food, SirJack almost felt too lucky and decided to cool down, spending some of the tendies on a Tesla. No, not Tesla options, you retard. A real-life Tesla car, and decided to take it easy for 3 months. But while SirJack slept, the market soared, and he caught a new case of the tendy tingles. He first went in on work, aka Slack, as he saw potential there, but Jack bought in at the $35 high and immediately lost 30%. He held for a partial recovery to $32, but then transferred everything to CRSR, Corsair Gaming, after seeing just how enthusiastic the gaming community was and how much they had to spend. He bought in at $24 per share and sold at $36, which did push him past the millionaire milestone, but he missed out on the run up to $51 following right after. Good thing he sold when he did though, as CRSR is now just $8 per share. Chapter 4 covers SirJack's philosophy for trades. He says that his strategy is to always go all in on a single stock, all shares. At first glance, going into shares alone rather than options ensures that theta isn't working against you. Before just diving into any stock with a long DD on WallStreetBets though, SirJack says that he builds a thesis and conviction of his own. He then stays in the trade and holds until the thesis itself is invalidated or another opportunity arises. He doesn't allow any margin trading or options trading on his account. The only other word of advice he has here besides the trade breakdowns we already covered was that he had tried to be a gay bear for an hour, playing SQQQ and TVIX, and he says to never, ever try to be a bear. Chapter 5 contains a confession, one that's going to hit OG WallStreetBets traders kind of right in the feels. Jack bought in at $13, over 88,000 shares, and was sold on GME being the mother of all short squeezes. However, the subsequent 20% drop made his stomach drop, and Jack waited for a rebound on December 18th, 2020, selling all 1 million of his holdings of GameStop for a tiny gain at around $15. In the coming weeks, we all know what happened. GameStop breaks loose, Deep Fucking Value / Keith Gill solidifies his legend status, and Jack was back in the cuck chair in the corner of the room, watching everyone else have all the fun. I think what's likable about Jack is that he never left these parts out. It makes him more human and relatable. I can't count how many times I've watched the stock moon and then thought, damn it, if I just bought at the low point, I'd be retired right now. Jack definitely needed a win. Well, not really. He's still over $1 million at this point, but just for his ego's sake. And Chapter 6 details Jack's attempt at a redemption arc after missing out on the lion's share of GME's gains. Titled Barking on a Stick, it starts with Jack reading user PoundSalt's now deleted submission about STIC investments and BarkBox. Jack's personal DD summary goes like this: I like what I saw. Pets, e-commerce, subscription, SPAC, basic white bitches spoiling dogs. This might be worth an all-in. So on December 23rd, 2020, SirJack went all in at $14.42 a share. Note that in December 2020, with his $1 million portfolio balance, Jack had not quit his job and was still working, doing meetings all day, and trying to sneak in his WallStreetBets DD post during a lunch break or between meetings. The next day, the CEO of BarkBox was featured on the news, and Christmas came early for Jack on the 24th as he had a 20% gain on his STIC shares. Chapter 7, which is the final chapter of Jack's Magnum Dong Opus Part 1, recaps Jack's early 2021 plays, including his steadfast belief in GameStop and STIC investments. I love the energy here. I'm not happy with just 25% in 3 months. I want 25% compounded on 25% compounded on another 25% compounded in the same 3-month time period. These 7 chapters alone would make for legendary status and an impressive video, but SirJackALot was far from done. He returns for Magnum Dong Opus Part 2 on Christmas Day 2021. You thought this 35k to 1.7 million picture was cool? Well, he did it all over again. SirJack now has $8 million to his name and announces his retirement from trading. He again attributes his success to post-nut clarity, which we'll talk about later. It is worth noting that the first 5 months weren't actually very profitable for SirJack, with the entirety of the $6 million+ in gains happening in the back half of the year. Here's receipts of all of his plays for the year. It's pretty hilarious to see that GameStop was his smallest return of them all because he did hold 1 share. And that's where we start for Chapter 1 of Magnum Dong Opus Part 2. Chapter 1 is called The Squeeze. You know the story. GameStop shoots up from $13 to $20 to $31. Elon tweets GameStonk. It's $65. It's $150. It's $347. GameStop hits the moon. But SirJack was not profiting from this. He was balls deep by this point in Corsair Gaming, 1.7 million in CRSR to be exact, and just one share of GameStop that he paid $20 for. So why was SirJack still celebrating with the other apes when the GME rocket ship launched to the moon? The reasons were twofold. Firstly, SirJack was glad that the thesis of GME being undervalued and overshorted was correct. But secondly, and more importantly, SirJack had an abundance mindset that would benefit just about any trader to have. He doesn't chase stocks, and he simply kept his eye on potential plays, claiming that there's, quote, always another play. In the meantime, Corsair Gaming bobbed up and down, but never made Jack any serious profits. Chapter 2 of Magnum Part 2 is titled RKT Up and Down. SirJack noticed the huge short interest special dividend announcement on the earnings call on February 21st and a huge volume spike. Jack hopped on the rocket ship on March 3rd, and overnight his $1.7 million became $2.9 million. Thinking the squeeze had more in the tank, SirJack held and lost 33% immediately the next day. Imagine you have $1.7 million on Monday, make over $1 million again on Tuesday, and then lose almost all of that on Wednesday. Jack writes that gaining $1 million and then losing it the very next day changes a man. The psychological toll must have been excruciating. But he held through the May 6th earning call after getting wrecked over and over again on the stock, and he had to sell for a 19% loss in May. Chapter 3 is Jack's next DD and YOLO on the Steel Gang, more specifically CLF or Cleveland Cliffs Incorporated. Found in r/VTards, an investment subreddit that I've just joined myself, CLF is an American steel company that Jack successfully swing traded again and again and again, 6 times throughout 2021 for a solid total gain. Jack called CLF the dependable Oni-chan, or big bro you could return to after getting thrashed out in the harsh world of speculative investing. Chapter 4 is titled Arc of Erection, Squeezin season, with 3 specific trades Jack made throughout the summer to solidify legendary status, jumping from 1.6 million to 4.2 million by September. First, he saw the 37% short interest on Clove, and so he dumped his CLF Steel play to, quote, flirt with some squeezies. His 1.6 million jumped to 2.2 million, and while he could have held just a few more days to break $5 million, Jack says he has no regrets locking in on his profits. Next, Jack eyed 148% short interest on SoFi while sitting on the toilet bowl, where else, and immediately went all in. Unfortunately, though, it was an error on the app. There was no 148% short interest on SoFi, and Jack had to wait 2 days due to 401k restrictions and had to sell for an 8% loss. The finale of Squeezin season was the best of all. SirJack saw Morgan Stanley's Adam Jonas give a $6 price target to Microvast, ticker MVST, while it was $8. Adam Jonas had also given Tesla a $10 price target when it was at $200, so basically this guy is a Jim Cramer-esque figure who keeps his comfy job and salary no matter how wrong his predictions are. Just to spite Jonas, SirJackALot YOLO'd all his funds into Microvast as a bull because Jonas was a bear, and he gained 70%. Unlike Rocket or Clove, where he sold too late and then too early, SirJack sold at the perfect time, timed the top perfectly, and now had $4.25 million in his pocket. Kenjai-taimu refers to the post-orgasmic period for a man where he no longer is impaired by his sexual drive, and he's able to actually make some clear-headed decisions for once. That's what SirJack aptly called Chapter 5 of his journey. Jack jumped into Palantir right before the August 12th earnings report with the belief that 5 bad earnings reports in a row for Palantir meant that any news should be good news. He was right, and he bagged 13% on Palantir's commercial contracts growth. Next up was SKLZ, or Skills Gaming. It had had disappointing returns since February, but Jack thought it had bottomed out. Well, apparently not if you look at the zoomed out chart, but Jack liked that the iconic game Big Buck Hunter was partnering with Skills. He made 4% and ran, next up trading Amazon, but actually lost 4% on the trade after holding for 2 weeks. Finally, in mid-September 2021, Jack had major FOMO for missing a couple short squeezes and emotionally invested in TMC, the metals company, but they dropped 25% and cost Jack $250,000. It's also worth noting that SirJackALot was banned from WallStreetBets in August of 2021, allegedly for pumping and dumping stocks, but there were likely a lot more politics and mods being mods behind the scenes. Honestly, I think that this was the catalyst for him starting Afterhours, as Jack claims that gains without the ability to share was just not the same. Chapter 6 is called Plot Armor Fully Activated as SirJack returns to the trusted, tried and true Cleveland Cliffs Incorporated for swing trading, becoming an official pentamillionaire worth over $5 million. And at the end of October, SirJack went all in on Teladoc Health, ticker TDOC, winning on another earnings report and crossing the $6 million mark. The seventh and final chapter of Magnum Dong Opus Part 2 is called Big Fucking Climax. SirJackALot was pointed in the direction of Big 5 Sporting Goods, ticker BGFV, by a fellow degen. The DD was that they were an undervalued sports retailer with a lot of short interest. Jack started with $1 million and held through a 9% drop, but then it bounced back to break even the morning after earnings. He decides to double down in the morning with another million, and then a third million, and then Jack just says, fuck it, we ball, and goes all in on the stock. It felt like a reunion of sorts, he said, with a lot of GameStop squeeze OGs reuniting. Big 5 did squeeze, with Jack's portfolio crossing 7, 8, 9 million, and briefly brushing $10 million for literally just 2 minutes, just enough time for him to screenshot, but apparently not long enough for him to sell. After dropping down to $8 million, SirJackALot had a post-nut epiphany that he had achieved his original goal of escaping wage slavery, and that $8 million was enough. Sir Jack then took a nice 2-week trip to Europe, enjoyed all of the Fat Fire luxuries. Fat Fire stands for financial independence and retiring early. He began to DCA into SPY and QQQ over the next few months. His switch to conservative investing stemmed from Jack's desire to avoid stress from now on. Having to check the news and refresh your stock watch list every 2 minutes was starting to get to him. Jack also made a separate post, not in his Magnum Dong Opus series, but aligned with Magnum Dong Opus Part 2 on the timeline. It breaks down exactly what he would look for in stocks when he did his YOLO everything into one stock strategy. The number one thing that he would look for was volume. It's simply a measurement of how many people care about what the stock is doing. High volume is usually a good thing. A sudden midday increase in volume is especially worth paying attention to, and if the news doesn't seem to really move a stock, just move along and don't even bother. The second thing Jack watched out for was support, specifically how close to support the stock was when he entered. That was just how much risk Jack assumed that he was taking, and dropping under support always meant an immediate sell. A long sell-off to support actually was viewed as a good thing by him because it meant that all of the bag holders had left and the stock had room to bounce now with no major sell-offs. The third factor Jack looked for in stocks he bought was a catalyst, something that gave people hope in the short term for an upwards price movement. Combined with an increase in volume, it would make for a perfect swing trade. Some examples included the Cleveland Cliff Incorporation stock that Jack swing traded regularly as investors were optimistic about rising steel prices. Palantir's catalyst was its new contracts. SoFi's was its bank charter. Skills was its new game and Indian expansion. Look up the tickers now, though. Some of these catalysts turned out to be very real, like Palantir, and others, like Skills, didn't turn out so well. Jack also writes that having a real understanding of the company you invest in and its industry helps a lot. Then you're not just dependent on headlines and secondary sources, you actually know what the hell is going on. And the final fourth note is less of a stock tip and more of a mindset one. Jack recommends you minimize your losses by avoiding options and high-risk stocks that can fully wipe you out within just days. Figure out your maximum risk, which for Jack was usually 10 to 25% depending on various factors, and monitor the stock manually with your plan in mind. Jack does emphasize that despite having a level head and obviously an incredible track record, he was still very lucky. To be honest, Magnum Dong Opus Part 3, which is published on Christmas Day of 2022, is a bit of a drag compared to the first two, so I'll tell you the interesting parts that you need to know. Most notably, SirJackALot reveals his Afterhours app, which I'm not affiliated with, but very interested in checking out as I just made an account. It basically lets you connect your brokerage and create a post with verified position attachments, sort of like WallStreetBets, but with verification of what your actual positions are. Sir Jack also revealed that the 2022 bear market had been somewhat unkind to his portfolio as he dropped from $8 million to $7 million, but it's not like he can't afford tiramisu anymore or something like that. Jack revealed that he almost bought Palantir at $18, but his wife actually changed the password to his brokerage account and wouldn't even let him in. Jack got caught up in scalping, pocketing $10K here, $30K there, but then you eventually blow $50,000 because you're putting $1 or $2 million in these scalp trades. He realized he needed to cool down again, saying, "You either die a hero or live long enough to become a boomer." And become a boomer he did. Jack began to dollar cost average $50,000 daily into VU and VGT every single market trading day for 8 months straight. That's just how much freaking money this guy had. He also went on to be featured as an interview subject in the NBC documentary Diamond Hands, The Legend of WallStreetBets, which serves as a fun 90-minute time capsule of the WallStreetBets GameStop squeeze glory of late 2020 and early 2021. His Magnum Dong Opus 4 in late 2023 highlights the updates made to Afterhours version 2. While it's all cool stuff, it's not necessarily relevant to today's video. Maybe I'll review that app another time. SirJack also deposited $35K back into Robinhood to try his hand at a new $35K to $8 million challenge. But after getting wrecked with Robinhood, NVDS, which is a leveraged NVIDIA short, and WeWork, SirJack's second attempt from $35K did not end at $8 million, but just under $8,000, an 80% loss. There also isn't a ton of relevant info in Magnum Dong Opus 5, released this past Christmas 2024, but I'm very impressed with the community Jack's been building around Afterhours. Additionally, he's raised $4.5 million from funders and revealed his identity, not as Jack, but as Kevin Shu. Before we close, I thought the Q&A from Magnum Dong Opus 1 was so insightful and pretty funny that I actually saved it for last. On taxes, SirJackALot says he traded in his 401k, so no taxes until he withdraws. On how exactly he got so good, Jack says he studies everything: technicals, charts, support levels, volume, etc., and that he can absorb the info very quickly. Asked why he makes such risky trades, Jack said his goal is 8 digits or bust. Such brazen boldness widespread in these trading communities harkens back to the days where men would go to war. Either you win and plunder for yourself whatever you can, or you get beheaded on the battlefield. No in between. This guy just had an answer for everything. When asked, how often do you jack off? SirJackALot claims that, quote, at least 2 times a day and always before I make a trade for that post-nut clarity. Wait, where did I hear that before?
You jerk off? Do I jerk off? Yeah. Yeah, I jerk off, yeah. How many times a week? Like, three or four times, maybe. I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket. I myself, I jerk off at least twice a day. Wow.
Ultimately, Jack had incredible timing, took advantage of a very volatile market, and went all in on research stocks that he had high conviction on. You also have to take survivorship bias into account somewhat, as there's always someone on the other side of these trades who tries to do the same thing and gets wiped out. Regardless, SirJackALot remains a true legend of the art of what it means to be a degenerate. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. Comment below what you think of this longer form kind of content, like and subscribe to GigaStocks for more fun Wall Street Bets trading videos, and check out the Discord to join a fellow tribe of apes. I'll see you all in the next one, and until then, to the moon, fellow retards.